the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is EDtech, episode 17, recorded Friday, June 21st, 2013. InfoComm wrap-up. This is EdTech, the monthly podcast put on to you by the fine folks at AVNation about the education industry in the world of AV. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host because nobody else showed up. With us this week, this month, as always, that laugh there is from the sunny shores of California. His name is Greg Brown, and he works at, well, work is a strong word. He is employed by the University of California, Los Angeles. How are you, sir?
That's still getting checks.
Hey.
So
and they don't bounce.
Right. Despite the best efforts of some of the folks in Sacramento some days.
Hey, brother, I work for the state of Illinois, so I'm right there with you. Somebody who doesn't work, but for the state of Illinois at least. His name is Matthew Silverman. He works for George Mason University. Welcome, sir.
How's it going, Tim?
Good. And last but not least, the only person who does not have jet lag among the four of us, his name is Scott Tyner, and he works for Bates College in the great state of Maine. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
We'll explain that in a second. So InfoComm 2013 was last week, and as I just mentioned as in my introduction to Mr. Tyner, he's the one that does not have jet lag because he was unable to make it. So this edition is going to be kind of interesting from that aspect because I want to get Scott's take, and actually Scott wrote a blog post for Rave Pubs based on attending, quote-unquote, InfoComm 2013 remotely. We'll get to that in a second. But guys, both Greg and Matt, you two were there. Matt, we'll start with you. What was maybe one or two things, either product-wise or networking-wise or even class-wise, that was your one or two favorite things from last week?
Well, one of the things that I loved is I really think I saw even more technology managers at the show this year than I have in previous years. One of the interesting things I started seeing is we have a new type of technology manager. It's not just the geeks anymore. A lot of people I talk to are in positions where they're specifying systems and are trying to figure out how to write good technical specs. Now, they're not necessarily looking to get under the hood, but this is a really interesting segment of, I guess, of our group that's emerging, and had a lot of real good conversations, a lot of people who are very interested in putting together documentation and things like that. So I'll tell you, the educational sessions I was involved in was absolutely fantastic. As far as the floor, it was a good floor. Actually, the energy level was fantastic on the floor, and it's been a little off. And past couple of years, it was definitely coming back last year. But saw some good product. Saw a lot of good incremental things. Nothing so much that blew me away. But a lot of good stuff, and a lot of people who I think are starting to move in the right direction.
Well, and to speak to your point about the energy level, first of all, let's mention the fact, kudos to InfoComm and Jason McGraw and everybody that does it and puts it on. It was the biggest one ever, which is...
And it was in Orlando.
And it was in Orlando, I was going to say, which
True,
is significant.
For Orlando, yeah. Usually Vegas is the big show.
Usually, yeah, they expect almost a little bit of drop-off between the Vegas and Orlando show, and they were hoping for, talking to some of the InfoComm folks on Thursday, they were hoping for the quote-unquote biggest East Coast show they'd ever done. And come 4 or 5 o'clock East Coast time on Friday, they released the numbers, and it was the biggest one ever.
I always thought InfoComm was like the Olympics, where they always announced it, the best Olympics ever. I thought InfoComm was always the biggest one ever.
No, they've been pretty honest when it comes to the numbers. I mean, last year it was a slight increase, but the 2 or 3 years previous, I mean, yes, honestly, because of the economy and the dip the economy took, the recession we had, it had dropped off significantly since about 07, 08.
Yeah, I think it was either 08 or 10, which I think was the previous biggest number ever. So, something like that.
Well, one company I was talking, or a lot of people made a comment about how they were really happy with the amount of traffic, and one company I was talking to, they said they had more people visit their booth Thursday this year than in the entire show last year.
Wow.
So they were very happy.
Well, and the other thing, and not that I can't go to the show with a PO. I don't know about you guys. I also talked with a number of manufacturers who were closing deals and had companies writing them POs on the show floor. And from an outsider looking in, I would say that that's significant as far as business, getting done at InfoComm. I would say that that's significant as well for the event itself to move forward and for energy and excitement to build for 2014.
Yeah.
So, all right, Mr. Brown, what was like one or two of your either classes or things that happened on the show floor?
Well, as far as Matt made the comment about more tech managers, we certainly had an unprecedented number at the Technology Managers Council meeting, where we had about 50 people, and which is certainly the biggest meeting we've had in recent memory. And we had our first, I hope, annual Technology Managers reception immediately after that, where I was told we had 109 people.
Wow!
So that was quite a nice little turnout. So if you are a technology manager, I'd encourage you to look into those two things next year.
Next year, shoot! Sign up for the council now. I mean, you can go on InfoComm's website.
Well, yeah, no.
You know what? It would really help if we had the technology managers council chair on this show once in a while. You know that?
I saw that one coming.
Sorry.
Yeah, and he was there ready to just jump in and promote the council at a moment's notice. Encourage everybody to join each and every meeting, right, or each and every show, right?
Just for clarification, Mr. Greg Brown is the chair of the. And Mr. Tyner is the former chair, so one of you two should have said something.
Long trip back from Orlando.
I guess. I'm just some schlub that shows up to the meeting once a year and every on a webinar.
Right. And let's see. And what was the other question?
Products, stuff on the show floor.
Products. Let's see. Couple of the interesting things I saw, I would love to get a hold of one and see how it actually works, but I like this new ceiling mounted microphone array by Clear One. It looks kind of about the size of, it's about a 1/3 cut of a 2x2 tile, so it's like 2 feet wide, maybe about 8 inches wide, and it's designed to mount as part of the ceiling grid, I believe. And it is a ceiling microphone array for your video conferencing system. And I'd love to, well, we don't do a lot of video conferencing, but if I did, that would be something I would like to give a try. I also like this really slick thing FSR has got, where it is basically it's an HDMI cable, and it's a little adapter about the size of the molded section on a regular HDMI cable. You've got 2 of those, but what plugs into that is basically a very rugged, small fiber cable, and you can run that. I don't know what the distance limitation is. And they were taking it, they were tying it in knots, and they were yanking on it, and they were doing all sorts of abusive things, and it worked just perfectly. And it's just a fiber cable that plugs into these 2 little HDMI adapters, and is apparently exceptionally rugged. I'm like looking at that, it's like, I can use something like that.
That was actually one of the interesting things. You just mentioned those 2 products. A lot of people were getting into new product lines. And actually, in my opinion, doing a pretty good job. I remember seeing that FSR product. That's nice. I think it was like 330 feet, give or take, on that cable.
Right.
Ceiling mics definitely seem to be one of the new fads this year, because Clear One got into them, Biamp I think got into them, Vadio got into them. All of a sudden, for years they've been telling us never use ceiling mics, and it's now the new. Yeah, it's a new black this year.
Yeah,
I would love to try them. I'm still suspicious because like the second thing you learn after righty tighty lefty loosey is don't use a ceiling mic. Or what is it, black and red plus minus sort of thing. It's never use ceiling mic. So I'd love to get some experience with one of those things, but with some of those products. And all the collaboration stuff. Everybody had some sort of collaboration hardware from the big guys, Crestron and AMX had a whole bunch of collaboration stuff. To Kramer had new collaboration stuff. FSR had some collaboration stuff.
AMX did too.
I already mentioned them.
Well, and here's the thing: if I heard the word huddle one more time, I was going to just go nuts or something. Yeah, everybody had a huddle room.
A huddle something or other. And also, we can't forget to mention that, now thanks to the folks over at K-Array, we all can honestly say, "Hey, baby, you want to see my Anakonda?"
Oh, stop it.
With their
did you see
Anakonda?
Did you see the Anakonda?
I saw the Anakonda, and apparently the level of jokes being made there in the booth went steadily downhill as the show progressed.
Oh, I'm sure.
The Anakonda is basically a 6-foot long flexible speaker, and it looks kind of like it looks like that mesh stuff that we wrap around cables to keep them from getting messed up. Except it's not a slit wraparound sort of thing. It's one continuous long piece about the size of a radiator hose, and it's 6 feet long or 2 meters or something like
2 meters.
that.
And you can hook, I think, 16 or 18 of them up together.
Yeah, it's got a little metal box with a speak-on connector on the end, and the thing is not you can't tie it in a knot.
Yes,
but
you can.
Did they tie it? Or
the only reason I know is a buddy of mine, my good friend Michael Drainer, works for Sennheiser. And
were you able to tie it that tightly?
I will put a link to my blog post about this 2 months ago. I tied the sucker in a knot. Literally.
That sounds painful.
If it lasts more than 4 hours, okay. Why do we always go sophomoric on this show? I don't know. Because there's 3 guys. I don't know.
And we work in higher ed. So,
and we work in higher ed, yeah. Can I say I am very disappointed in both of you. Neither of you mentioned the first annual Technology Managers Symposium on Super Tuesday. Maybe because both of you taught on it. No.
This was the second.
It was the second?
Second, yeah.
Oh, the second annual then, sorry. It was the first one I was at. It was very nice. It was very well done.
Which the Technology Managers Council helped to coordinate.
Yeah.
And we'll do again next year.
Yeah, it was very nice. Very well attended.
Yeah.
We
were, with the exception of the tech trends,
which is huge,
which is which gets 300, 400 people. The Technology Manager Symposium was the largest Super Tuesday class with 96, I think it was.
Really? I thought it was over 100.
Yeah, we broke 100 on that one.
Yeah.
So.
And I'll say, really all the technology manager events were education. We're just doing blockbusters. One of the sessions I did on Wednesday morning was 8 a.m. Go figure, people show up for, say, the show 8 a.m. But we were standing room only, over probably 80 to 90 people in the room. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was very well done, and the networking that was happened there. I was honored enough to MC it, which just meant that I got to introduce people like Matt and Greg and Melissa Dillman from Kramer. But the diverseness in the room, I did a quick survey when I went up there, and I'm like, who works in education? We had education, we had government, we had corporate, We had healthcare. It was a very well represented cross section of everybody in the industry that is actual, honest to goodness tech manager. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Actually, one of the interesting things I saw in a lot of my sessions, we had a lot of integrator crossover as well.
Oh, really?
That we're seeing interested. I don't think I saw a single consultant at any of them, but we definitely had some integrator crossover.
I think there was a secret rule at InfoComm not to let them in this show floor this year. Sorry, that was totally rude.
It's about time some of the integrators learned something anyway.
Jeez, you guys are just mean. It's Friday. Be happy. Mr. Tyner, you were not able to join us, because if you had, then you would have been one of the guys that was, because you're smart enough and doggone it, people like you. But you did write a very nice piece, and I actually liked this because you turned me on to something, the Clear One, that I didn't realize. I had glossed over it, and I had to go back to it. But you wrote a piece for Rave Pubs talking about attending InfoComm remotely. So remotely, what was one or two of your favorite things?
Well, I think, I did, like I said, so I'm reliant on the press. I'm reliant on press releases. And we talked in our last show about what we were going to be looking for. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if what I saw was because I was looking for it or because it is some of the trends. But I think that, one of the things I wrote about there was, for me, it's very clear that video conferencing, more web-based as opposed to hardware-based, more wherever you happen to be, is a real trend. So whether it's I'm trying to think whether it was Daylight had a video conferencing tool. Clear One had some. Was it? I can't remember what the other was. Which one of those companies? They actually had a camera in their screen. It must have been Daylight that actually put the camera in their screen. So for me, it was that video conferencing piece was a huge one. I think the other one, and this is rare for me to say because I hate wireless, is this wireless presentation stuff that ties a little bit into the huddle stuff that we kept hearing about. But whether it's Crestron or whether it's this company Immersive, or whether it was Kramer had some wireless stuff, that I'm actually a little confident that this stuff is going to work, which is encouraging to me because I can't tell you how many times I hear, well, geez, why isn't all this wireless yet? And the answer usually is because wireless doesn't work in a commercial environment.
Details.
Yeah, right. But they say it does. This stuff really looks like it does.
The administration is not troubled by issues like that.
And I was a big fan of Apple TV, but Apple TV certainly has its limitations, and so I think we're starting to see some changes here now.
One of my things that I don't think got as much press as maybe it should have, and it's a simple thing, but oh my gosh, the longer I think about this, I was talking with Chris Netto from AV Shout and Red Band and AV Help Desk. Did you guys see the Panasonic short throw? And I shouldn't say short throw. Uber, technically it's an ultra short throw lens.
No.
0.38 to 1.
Wow.
Let me repeat that.
Yeah.
0.38 to 1. Now, if you are somewhat of a projector aficionado, typically 0.8 to 1 is roughly the shortest short throw. You can get, some people have gotten down to 0.6. 0.38 to 1. That means you can get a 100-inch image from 6 inches back. And it's detachable. So it's not like this weird looking, and nothing against the short throw projectors. Thank God they came out with them when they did. But now you've got an honest to goodness, you can get whatever lumens projector short throw you want and come back a foot, and holy crap, I was very impressed with it, and the more I think about it, I'm like, this right here should have been one of the show favorites from people, because you know what, I get it, it's a lens, but holy cow, is that remarkable. So the other thing for me, and this is kind of weird, I actually talked with Sean Robinson from AMX, and he and I had a very nice, candid conversation. I don't use AMX on my campus. And that's one of the things I told him. I said, look, I don't know anything about it. But one of their products really, really struck me as being so geared toward higher ed and so geared to corporate, and that's the Enzo, ENZO. Did either of you see this?
I didn't. I saw some lit on it, but I didn't have a chance to see a demo.
It's okay. So it's a box that is a presentation box. Is the best way I can describe it. You can grab stuff from the cloud. You can grab stuff from your flash drive. You can grab it from Dropbox and integrate it all together. Once you're done with the presentation, if you want to share it, you can do a QR code or a direct link, so the students can write down the link and go afterwards and grab the presentation. Less than $2,000. So not only was it the functionality, but it was also the fact that this thing is less than $2,000, which in my world, you're looking at cascades for PCs, and I know I can go to the IT guys and go, all right, you know what? You're already spending $1,500. Give me $300 or $400 more, and I can get you something that's not going to take up as much space, not going to suck up as much energy, and not going to create as much heat as that tower you're getting ready to put in. So those were my two holy cow. I mean, yeah, obviously you've got the one-wire stuff with the HD-Base-T and the AVB. They actually, at the HD-Base-T Pavilion, they had a Samsung prototype that had power and audio and video going over one single piece of HD-Base-T, which was cool. It was interesting. Very thin, running the power over that single piece of category cable was cool. You guys mentioned the Muse, which was again a one-wire solution, their own proprietary, right? It wasn't.
Yeah, that was Altinex's proprietary. Actually, right. I thought that was one of the best both booths and products of the show.
Yeah, they brought one thing.
Yeah, and it was great. And I mean, I've used a lot of their boxes and things like that from time to time, but it was great. You walk in, you knew exactly what you were looking at. They showed it to you, and 150 watts over a single Cat 6 HDMI plus I think IR and RS-232.
Yep.
Up to 330 feet.
And was that shielded, Matt, or is that unshielded?
I believe that's just vanilla Cat 6, which I believe is shielded. Okay. So.
And they gave me one of the best lines of the show. I was giving them a hard time because I know some folks there, and because they're a local company, and they actually were showing the same product last year. It's just that it's shipping now, and they told me, well, what they had last year was pre-technology.
Oh, jeez, nice. We got this from the future.
Yeah, it was pre-technology last year, and now it's actually shipping.
Well,
but they did show they show exactly the same product last year.
Can I say something to that real quick?
But it is a great product.
It's a neat product, and to that end, I want to say it was somebody that was on the AV Week. Holy cow! 2-hour special we did. That was like almost a theme. It was an underlying unofficial theme this year. I'm going to say 90% of the stuff that I saw was shipping. And I think that's significant, not just for a trade show in general. We've been doing AV Week for 2 years now, and that was my very first episode. That was one of my biggest gripes, is the fact that you got all this vaporware on the show floor. Most of the stuff that I saw on the show floor was shipping, and I think that is also significant.
Didn't we get tired of that? I mean,
yes.
We all ranting about that like 2 or 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and I think you're right. I think everybody's kind of learned that lesson. Plus, I think one of the biggest offenders in that whole area doesn't show up at the show anymore, but
Microsoft typically ships things.
Right. Good.
I'm curious. What is that? Right there. What does that say about the industry? One of the things I was thinking about when you said what was the big showstopper at InfoComm? Is the industry beyond these big showstoppers and more into now just showing good, working, advancing product? What really could be a showstopper today? And because I thought the same thing. Crestron Air Media, for example, I was like, oh, cool. Next March I get to take a look at it. They're not shipping yet, but they claim August 1st.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wow, that's shocking. But what does that say about the industry? Are they developing product faster? Are they putting it out as soon as they get it? They're not holding on till June.
There is some of that, Scott, honestly, to that point, is the fact that unless you've got something significant or you start developing it and it just happens to fall within this, April, May, June, July timeline, they're releasing stuff. I mean, we had Nick Scott on from Crestron. He's one of their marketing guys, and had him on the first part of May, and he let slip the whole smart TV app that they were developing, which they were showing at InfoComm this year. But they already had it. I mean, they had it, and they were working on it, and they felt comfortable enough to say it, in a weird version of the press, but in the press, and they said you can see it at InfoComm, and they actually did a press release a week before the show. Mm-hmm. And so, I think you're right. The guys they're just developing things faster. I don't want to be, I don't want to be the patent, the head of the patent office, in early 1900s that say, nothing can shock us, that everything's been invented. I think when it shocks us, it'll be one of those things where, holy cow, I never thought of this, or I never thought this would ever exist, type thing.
Well, I mean, I think what we're seeing is maturity in the industry. I mean, and that's technology maturity. I mean, think about it if you used to go to a networking trade show and, going from, something like Cat 3 to Cat 5 was huge. But then all of a sudden it started being incremental change. And I think after we made the big jump to digital, we're in that incremental change. I mean, the next complete architecture change we may have is AVB. And we know it's coming. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be like HDMI, which kind of, hit us upside the back of the head. But it would take, a radical change in technology. I mean, it'd have to be something like holography or something like that, where all of a sudden we have to fundamentally change what we're doing. And I don't know if we have, it's not that nothing's left to be invented, but I'm not sure how many of those groundbreaking shifts we have coming, or if it's going to keep the pace that it was, particularly in the 2000s.
I think
well,
also,
right. That's one of the things I was thinking when I heard this is, as I looked around at the product, it seemed to me like exactly what you said, Matt. That a lot of the product has matured, and that now the manufacturers are really listening to what people need,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
and really kind of adapting their product to what people need.
I think it's also just coming out of the recession and people playing it a little bit more conservatively. I think most of what we saw were in part incremental, but they were also sort of smaller, safer sort of things. This wasn't. I didn't expect this would be the year where everybody's parading their 190-inch 8K flat panel displays on the show floor, and it certainly wasn't. Everything was much more smaller and I think better thought out. It wasn't as flashy as things have been at times in the past.
Let's go back to that big blue elephant we kind of dodged a couple minutes ago, and talk about the fact that Extron is now the second year they're not at the show. And some of the reasons they said they're not at the show is no one announces product there. And actually, thinking back to this year, I actually think some product announcements may have gotten lost in all the noise of the show. But the other aspect is that I found more valuable than ever, and this is my manufacturing partners, is really being able to have conversations about solutions, future product trends with them. And really having that, FaceTime is just so valuable in what we do and understanding where we're going. And, I think the show is still so incredibly relevant. I mean, we can see by how the floor is expanding, and there was a tremendous amount of, I think, new exhibitors there this year. Mm-hmm. So it's really, I think, doing pretty well. And I still think, unfortunately, for Extron, they need to find a way to get back there, because they're just seem to be losing a lot of visibility in the industry by not being there.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. So that's just my 2 cents. To Matt's point about new exhibitors, there were two people that I was struck by. One was a company called Beam, BEAM, and
we want to strike you occasionally.
Yes, I know, but you're in California and you can't reach that far.
Right.
That is the personal. I'm calling it the personal video conference device.
Those were weird.
They were neat. I'm sorry. Basically, what it is you logging on to a Beam and remotely, and you have a web interface, and you remotely from the far end are driving this. It's a pair of wheels, and then you have a stem, and then you have a monitor, a video monitor on the top, and it's you driving around at another location. Whether it's, Scott could have attended our tweet up remotely using a Beam. He couldn't have drank anything.
Tim and I did discuss. We were trying to figure out ways to do that.
We were, yes.
But there was no way to pass the cold beverages back and forth remotely.
Yes.
So,
although the Beam is about the right height for Scott.
Oh, jeez. Wow.
Greg's always winning friends and influencing people, right?
He is. I didn't realize he was 6'2". So, no, it's a neat technology. And again, this was their first time. And
maybe we should get them to lend us one next year, and we'll bring somebody in remotely that way.
Well, actually, we were talking with Scott Hassan from the CEO of it after the show, and he's like, you should bring one of the guests was saying, you should bring about 10 or 20 of these next year. He goes, forget that. He goes, I can bring 1,000, and he started doing the math. This guy thinks on a whole different level. I mean, he thinks like on a Steve Jobs level. Very interesting guy, very interesting product. And the other guys that I was impressed by, again, first time exhibitors, was Wirestorm. I don't know if you or Greg or Matt saw it, or even if Scott, you guys saw these. First time showing HD-based T solution, and holy cow, do they have a lot of HD-based T solutions. I think they were claiming the most HD-based T products on the show floor, like in any one vendor. Very, very impressive stuff. And they've been doing it for 3 years now. They established themselves in 2010, right around the time that HD-based T was getting started, and they had one of the first HD-based T products out there. So yeah, those guys were also impressive. So, all right, you are listening to EdTech. Thank you so much for listening. Scott Tyner is here, Matt Silverman from George Mason, and Greg Brown. A couple things that I wanted to throw out there specifically about technologies. One was an interesting battle that I was not prepared for, and that is color brightness. Did anyone see the color brightness at Epson's booth? No one saw the color brightness.
This is where we cue Matt up to talk about standards, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
The color brightness. Now, understand, Epson is thoroughly, wholly involved in 3 LCD technology.
And they are 3 LCD effectively.
Now, as a full disclaimer, the college that I work for, we're like 95% standardized on Epson products. That being said, I thought this was a bit stretched for them. Basically, and I'm going to say basically, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Standards. Basically, what they were saying was because DLP, single chip DLP, has to turn off colors to turn them on, that if you compare the red, green, and blue, quote unquote, brightness to a 3 LCD, which doesn't have to turn off the colors, that the effective lumens level is a third. So if you have a 3,000 lumens DLP, you're in effect only getting 1,000 lumens, and in the color brightness for the 3 LCD, you're getting the full 3,000. The DLP response to that, the only one I got was from Ben Q. They said, well, that's just silly because we have like 5 million colors. So, Mr. Standards?
Wow. Well, I'm going to have to be a little sheepish here because I actually didn't spend much time at their booth, since I have a great local rep, and I was just going to follow up with him after the show. I'm not actually aware of a standard for color brightness. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be one. You are comparing a little bit of apples and oranges with different projector technology, but you have to set up your performance requirements. I mean, this almost sounds like someone in marketing realized we have something which we can legally say and threw it out there. So I'm trying to figure out exactly where they're going with this one. On the standard side with InfoComm, we have talked about color imagery being something we need to look at for a performance standard, down the road. We don't have a time frame on it, so it's definitely there. I think at the end of the day, and this is something conversation I've had with 2 different LCD projector manufacturers, you need to shoot them up against each other, figure out your application, figure out your right performance criteria for your application. I've had manufacturers claim to me that a projector, which I obviously could tell the color was off on, would be fine because the user doesn't have a reference color. So
wow.
Actually that was I shot 2 and they were both 3 LCD against each other. The green on one projector was off. You didn't need a scope to figure that one out. And I said, really? I mean, is there anything we can do about it? Can we tweak this? I said, well, if you just set it by yourself, because your user doesn't have a reference, they'll think it's correct. And there's probably something correct, about that. So with anything, when you're looking at using product, you have to set up performance standards to figure out how you expect not just the projector, but the system to perform. And that's what you need to measure. There's a couple of guys out there who do a lot more with projection than I do, who could probably give you some better technical answers on how to address this. But to me, this may just seem like the latest in the DLP 3 LCD wars, which have been going on for as long as I recall.
Yeah. The other side of this, and this is where I'll give Epson some kudos, was the fact that they were shooting on an angle, on a corner. And if you know anything about projection technology, that's not possible. And what it is, it's an evolution of their quick corner technology. Not their quick corner, but a quick corner where you can shoot against an angle, a 90-degree angle, either where the point of the 90-degree is closest to you or farthest away, and then you manipulate the actual image to where it make it look like it's actually square. So that other thing I thought was cool. One more thing, guys, and just we're going to start with Scott because this is something we can all answer. One thing that was prevalent, I would say, at InfoComm this year was 4K. And the question is not, is it here or is it applicable to us? But the question is when. And the reason I say that is because just like with any sort of advancement in technology and resolution, we will have to address it at some point. This is not 3D, right? This is an increase in resolution. So the question for you, Mr. Tyner, is when will we have to deal with a higher resolution than HD? Let's put it that way. I won't even say 4K because some of us may jump 4K and go to 8K.
Yeah, wow. I don't feel as though I can answer that question. I think that we dealt with this when we talked about digital, and we've dealt with it when did we go to Blu-ray players, when did we leave VHS. I think that I guess the answer for me is, when I look at a product and they're readily available and in my price range, or perhaps maybe somebody in my science department or something of the sort really sets up a requirement that needs it. I can hear Matt saying exactly that. Set up your requirements, and if your requirements call for 4K, that's when you're going to use it.
Well, and that's a valid answer. I mean, that right there is a valid answer. That's why we ask the questions, and that's a good answer. That's probably one that I would come up with. Mr. Silverman, what is your answer for this one? When are we going to have to deal with this?
Well, if you remember in the Tech Manager Symposium, one of the future techs that I was talking about was resolution.
Symposium.
Symposium, yes. Symposium.
It's Friday. Leave him alone.
And one of the questions I actually asked the audience was exactly where Scott was going. It's not a when, but it's a why. Okay. It's, what are your applications for this? And I think in the 120 or so folks we had in the room, only one person put their hand up.
Yeah.
And the gentleman put his hand up, said, well, we have a architecture program, at our university, and I need to go as high as I can go because they want to look at every little piece of detail. And he said I'd go 8K if I could.
Wow.
So it was something where, again, and Scott and I seem to be in the same place. It's not a when. I don't think, like digital, there'll be a magical date where we all have to cut over. I mean, if you're doing PowerPoint, 720p will work for you for just about forever. I mean, you're not you don't really need a level of detail. So it's figuring out what the application that requires that resolution, and then in what environment are you actually going to benefit from it. One of the big conversations with 4K is, at a certain point when you're far enough away from it, you can't distinguish the detail between 1080p and 4K. So trying to figure that out is, again, based on your application and what you're looking to do. And I think we're going to see more and more of it, but I don't know if there'll ever be that point until maybe, the broadcasters cut over to it, which is probably 25 years from now, where there'll be you have to do it for mainstream adoption. The only other way I could see us, again, having to cut over is when it just becomes such a cheap technology that you can't buy anything but a 4K projector or display.
Yeah. And that's probably where we'll be headed too, because let's be honest, I still buy VCRs because we have some faculty who you'll pry that VHS cassette from their cold dead hands. So,
well, I don't think any amount of upscaling will ever make a VHS look good on a 4K display.
No, absolutely not.
Well, come on, don't you guys must have some of these integrators who came in years ago and they took your composite video out of your VCR, upscaled it to S video, and sent it to your projector. I mean, that really increased the quality.
Yeah.
I'm still pulling notes out of classrooms, believe it or not. I'm like, oh God, I'm so glad you did that for me. And of course, but I was also going to say, we've still got 1024 by 768 projectors on campus, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So, we're still, I think that, Matt and I are in the same place with that. It's, maybe some specialty applications, or the day when, they're $3,000 like every other projector.
Yeah.
I think I think it's going to be somewhere on the order of like 5 or 6 years down the road, because we are all, relatively speaking, collectively in the middle of our switch over to HD, basically. Some of us a little bit ahead, some of us a little behind of that, and we're just not there for 4K yet. So I think the next time we're around for a major system refresh, 5-6 years down the road, that's when it's going to become a much bigger thing in higher ed, because I think by that time the resi and the just television and the entertainment industry, the source material will have matured enough such that once we hit that point in our cycle, people are going to start looking at it a lot closer, I think.
Kind of like with the digital stuff, once they start bringing in 4K and going, why doesn't this look as good?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very good. All right, gentlemen, that's going to do it for this month. With us, that gentleman right there has been Greg Brown from UCLA. How can people find you, sir?
Has been. I
still
am,
are.
I think.
You still are. You know what? I'm 1 week removed from InfoComm, and I'm still. Yeah. Who are you, and where can people find you?
And you're still fatigued and lethargic.
Oh yes,
right?
I'm still fatigued and lethargic.
Best place is LinkedIn, and also now that I'm done with my presentation there at InfoComm and worrying about it, I would like to get back to doing some blogging there on InfoComm's All Voices blog. So should have some more material on there soon.
Very good. Also, Mr. Scott Tyner, he is from Bates College, but also is a blogger for Rave Pubs. Where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me either at Rave Pubs or my blogs or my column. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I'm trying to keep up with my tweets and follow everybody as they attended InfoComm, and that's where you can find me.
Very good. And last but not least, Mr. Standards, and the reason we call him that is because he is the chair of the Standards Committee for InfoComm, but he also works for George Mason University. Mr. Matthew Silverman, thank you, sir. Where can people find you?
LinkedIn is the best place to find me. And speaking on that standards note, just to let everyone know, the Audiovisual Systems Performance Verification Standard has now gone out to public review. So you can now find that if you go to InfoComm/standards, there'll be a link to download the draft standards. You can take a look and comment on it.
Very good. Infocom.org/standards. Very good. Thank you, sir. My name is Tim Albright. You can find me on Twitter, TD, Tim David Albright. But more importantly for me and everybody here at AVNation, please go by the website, avnation.tv. avnation.tv, you'll find this podcast, our weekly AV Week, Live Life, the new AV Social. We have a Control podcast. We have a number of them. Sometime here in the next month, we're going to start a couple projector ones. And there is a rumor that the guys over at Red Band, the AV Shout, hijacked some of my equipment last week at InfoComm, and they produced a podcast as well. So I have yet to hear that, so we'll see how that turns out for them.
That scares me.
Me too. Really. Chris Netto, Mike Brandes,
Yeah, you think we're a motley crew.
Well, see, this is one of those where I can finally click explicit on a on the podcast code. So,
we're gonna work blue.
Yeah, they're the Red Band guys. They don't take any prisoners. So anyhow, yeah. So check out the website if you would, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks for listening. This has been EdTech.